The Flood, Halo's most terrifying enemy, the sole reason why the Halo rings were developed in the first place. The Flood have been one of Master Chief's biggest foes since the first game. So should we see this terrifying enemy return in the newest game in the franchise? Well, let's get right into it. We see the Flood for the first time in the Halo Combat Evolved 6th mission titled 343 Guilty Spark. You're tasked with finding Captain Keyes and his squad. You make your way through a dark, gloomy jungle and then approach what seems to be a big Forerunner facility. You see what seems to be Marines shooting their assault rifles through the building and the Covenant fleeing in terror. There is a tense atmosphere whilst you walk through the Forerunner facility, and you see no elites in sight as you make your way deeper into the facility itself. With blood all over the walls, you then stumble across an insane Marine who is clearly traumatized and starts to open fire on you with his pistol. Then we make it into the room where a dead Marine falls on Chief. Then the Master Chief glances across the room and sees a helmet and proceeds to pick it up and watch the helmet cam footage to see what happened to the squad. We see the squad make their way through the facility the exact same way that we, the player, came through. They then hack their way into the room that the Covenant seemed to lock down. Everything seems very off and suddenly, a Marine contacts the squad on a radio screaming while he dies. A Marine called Mendoza all of a sudden hears some sort of noise, and we see Flood infection forms surrounding Private Jenkins along with Sergeant Johnson, Captain Keyes and the rest of their squad. They all seem KIA. We, the player, then see infection forms bursting their way through all doors, surrounding you from all sides. Then combat forms come charging out, swinging at you with their big menacing arms. When I first played this mission for the first time, it scared the shit out of me. The way the Flood were introduced in Halo Combat Evolved was by far the best in the original trilogy. Going into that huge structure with blood all over the walls and that insane Marine you meet, it really intensifies the atmosphere and really makes you fear the Flood. Halo 2's Flood was probably the weakest version of the Flood due to how boring they were to fight. Both in Halo CE and Halo 2, the Flood were not as fun to fight as the Covenant, and that was due to how lacking the enemy types were, because you only had 3 different types of Flood you could fight against: infection forms, combat forms, and carrier forms. But in Halo 3, Bungie attempted to make the Flood a lot more interesting to fight. In Halo 3, there were the 3 standard versions of Flood: infection, combat, and carrier. But there were also a new version of the Flood known as Pure Form Flood, which had Stalker Form, Ranged Form, and Tank Form. These Flood forms were Bungie trying to make the Flood more versatile and engaging and fun to fight against, but they still weren't as fun to fight against as the Covenant. Then the Flood were recently reintroduced in Halo Wars 2 Awakening the Nightmare DLC. We see a new form called the Abomination, and it looks like the Abomination took heavy inspiration from a cut Halo 2 Flood form called the Juggernaut. And even though Halo Wars 2 was an RTS, not a standard first-person shooter Halo game, it was really fun, nice and refreshing to see the Flood return. Some of the most boring and repetitive missions in the original trilogy were the ones that had Flood in them. Missions like the Library, Sacred Icon, and Cortana are some of the most universally despised missions in the franchise. So some people would debate if the Flood returning in Halo Infinite could be a bad thing, and that the Flood could bring with them repetitive and boring gameplay. But I still think anything is better than the Prometheans. So if I had to choose between the Flood and the Prometheans, I would definitely without a doubt choose the Flood, and I think all Halo fans would agree. And the 343 put more time into fleshing out the Flood a little more, then maybe they could be just as an interesting enemy to fight as the Covenant or Banished. It's been over 10 years since we last fought the Flood in a traditional Halo first-person shooter game. And I think with Halo Infinite, it would be the perfect time to see one of Master Chief's oldest foes return. And given that we're on the Halo ring for the first time from what we've seen, I believe there's never been a better moment to see the return of Halo's most terrifying enemy, the return of the Flood. So what do you guys think? Would you like to see the Flood return? And if so, do you think they'll just be as menacing as they were in Halo Combat Evolved? Put a comment in the comment section down below on your thoughts about the Flood, and leave a like if you enjoyed. And subscribe to stay up to date on all my future videos on Halo Infinite. This is Mr. Savage, and thank you for watching.